light seekers. There's a lot of light seekers out there. I'm not in the shadows like some funeral directors are because, I think there's a lot of special people out there that are in this profession. And I also think there's a lot of special people out there that should be introduced to this profession because they'll find that purpose and their place in the world. And I find it that a lot of people push this aside because they think it's scary and dark.
You're dealing with dead people and
Yeah.
sadness. But
And
the way you talk about it is it's almost, yes, you're dealing with dead people, but it's the opposite. It's not sadness.
it's love.
Welcome to A Place of Yes, a podcast about how I moved through my darkest hour. And for me, that was in channeling my grief into good. Welcome to the show. I am excited to be sitting here with Brittany DeMarco-Furman. And this is one of those small world situations. Because when I first was thinking about you for the show, it was because I saw your book, The Grief Experience. And we will definitely be talking about that. But then when I reached out to you, we were talking over Zoom and you were like, hey, Heather, I actually know you. And I've put it together. So we met, like so many of the guests on this show, through Jake's Help from Heaven.
Yes.
Your boyfriend at the time, now husband,
Mm-hmm.
worked for Saratoga Honda and was good friends with the Higgins.
Yeah.
And I'm good friends with the Higgins, and they supported Jake's Help from Heaven, supported our fundraiser. And this is a fun fact, part of it was that they said their general manager or their manager, whatever his role was also an amateur bowler.
Actually, I was a WAG. He was in the PBA.
Oh, a real bowler.
Yeah, he was
a professional bowler.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had that wrong in my story here. Professional bowler. And they thought as sponsors, wouldn't it be fun if you guys came and like our kickoff, usually at that event, that was our primary fundraiser. Brian and I would talk. We would like kick off the bowling, and it'd be great to have someone who is a professional kind of do that first. I don't even know what you call that.
Oh, I was so proud of him. I remember how he did it, and he got all the strikes.
It was super
all
fun.
The kids thought he went through his leg, and I was like, I love this man.
it was just so great. And I remember instantly connecting with you. Like we were just chatting, and it was so fun because it was almost the beauty of that event. So needless to say, once we made that connection, I was like, this is going to be such a great conversation because, like the real me and the behind the scenes and the whole, like you said, that was probably 2015 or something. And we started doing that event in 2011. So it was still relatively new. And I always joke when we started the organization, when we started Jake's Help from Heaven, we just did it sheerly out of loss, having lost Jake, and out of love and out of keeping his memory alive. But we didn't know what we were doing. It's not like we had a history of fundraising or nonprofit work, right? It's just following your gut and doing what you love. And that leads me a little bit to you, because you are a funeral director at Glenville Funeral Home.
Yes.
And fourth generation, is that true?
I am fourth generation. Even today, people were like, I remember your grandpa. Even your great grandpa. I was like, oh gosh, hi, I'm here.
So talk to me about being a fourth generation funeral director. There's got to be pressure around that because, like you just said, people are coming in and they know those who have done it before you.
Mm-hmm.
And is it something that you always knew you would end up doing, or is it something that you kind of came upon in a non-direct route?
Yeah, it's such an interesting way I got into it because I had it right on the silver platter. Here you go, Brittany. I'll pay for your mortuary science school at 17, 18 years old. Mom and dad, who's taking over? And I was like, bye, see you later. No,
like, absolutely not.
No, I didn't. I didn't want to take over. I had other ambitions. I wanted to see the world. And also, what 17, 18-year-old knows enough about life to talk about death? Even today, but earlier today, I was meeting with a family and, their mom died. They're the same age as me. And here I am trying to be strong for them and find the answers for them. I know how to be their guide. I know how to get them from A to Z, but also to realize that any of us could be in that same position. And it hits home. And when I was 17, 18 years old, I could not see myself at the end of the table guiding these families and them trusting me. So the answer was
a big no.
Mom and dad.
A big point because 17 or 18, like almost everything that your parents say you don't want to listen to anyways. But then, I mean, you talk about the role of a funeral director and just today. So before recording, you are doing your real job today, meeting with families who are going through loss. It is heavy. How do you do it?
I wish there was a simple answer, but you being brave at your charity events and you running an organization with your own heartbreak and your own goals for the community, it's to create this love and this safe place by being brave, by being the person to put myself out there, to be the person to break the ice, to be the person to have the shoulder, to be the guide, to
To do the
just
thing.
be there, and it's uncomfortable at times. I feel like when I'm talking to somebody, my head's 3 steps up before what I'm saying, before my mouth opens up, because you never know. You have to read a room. It's very psychological, but it's also human. It's okay to make mistakes. Don't just walk on eggshells. This is their worst time in their life. Don't make it like a transaction. Don't make it into a business. Do not rush them. Open up. I didn't know that at 17, 18 years old, but I truly love the human experience and I love learning about people. And when I start the conversation, I start at a place of tell me all about them. And let's start from the beginning. And we can go all over the place from marriage to then going back to the early stages, but let's find their essence through this conversation.
So I want to circle back more with your story, but I want to interject because you brought me back. So Jake died when he was 4. It was unexpected. And I think that's always interesting because people thought because he was so sick that we were ready for him to die. And we were not, and we had not thought about it at all. So like, we didn't even know what you were supposed to do. Right. And I'm sure you have people like us, like we didn't even know where to go. But I will tell you that the funeral director there, if I saw him right now, I would cry and give him a hug. The things that you just said, like the part about listening and getting to know the person, because it's true. It's oftentimes their very worst moment. And even if it's not a child, right? Even if it's the loss of an elderly parent, it's still loss. And Roland, he did a couple things. He let us just talk. He let us just be, and he guided us. And I like the way you have used that word guide, because we were very much like Jake died on a Wednesday and we were like, okay, Sarah, service on Friday, burial on Saturday. Like, we want this done. And he advised so strongly against it and just kind of pushed us gently and got us to the point where we didn't, where we did, I think, Monday, Tuesday. It made all the difference, because what he then also did was told us to go get a super comfortable, like his favorite outfit. What's Jake's most cozy outfit? And he got him in that outfit and he kept him in the room that entire weekend and let us come at any time to hang out with him. Since Jake died so suddenly, that was the time we needed. Like, right? That was our closure. That was our saying goodbye. Like, I remember waking up at 2 a.m. and going with like a blanket and just sitting there, and Brian coming. I think people thought it was morbid, but it was not.
No, it's not.
It was the closure we needed that we were not going to get otherwise. And he did that. Like, he tricked us into thinking it was our idea, right? Like, he was like, I'm just going to do this, but it's the guiding. And I think I am so grateful to people like you who do this work and who take it as seriously as you do, who it's a calling. And I feel silly saying that, but it is a calling, because what you do for people at their worst hours there's nothing like it.
And just thinking about Roland and, simply just slowing you down, because your grief just wanted this part over. But he knew that we will never get those moments back. He knew the importance, and there's a fog. No matter who passes away, there's a fog. Yeah. And when I say guide, it's because as directors, we're supposed to try to find a little bit of light, but get the steps that we're supposed to do done, but also kind of find that slow moment, because grief is going to move so differently after the funeral that you have to try to find the ways to make these moments so impactful, because it's going to help with the healing. And he did that.
He did it so amazing. And it has allowed me, as I have unfortunately come across people, through the foundation or just through life, right, who have also lost children or whatever. It is the one thing that I give as advice now sometimes, slow it down. As weird as it sounds, spend time with them, sit next to them. Like, that time is so important, because you're right. As soon as they're buried or cremated or however you do it, as soon as that part ends, it's like you've got the whole rest of your life stuck in this place.
Yeah.
And you're right, because we just wanted to rush it. I mean, I'm probably going to say this 1,000 times through this episode. I think what you guys do is just so important and so beautiful. So to bring it back to you, 17 or 18, you were not ready. You were not having it, yet here we are.
I know.
How did it?
It was just more of a, a story of growing up and, also the growing pains in a way. So I am, I think, 23 now. I went away to college. I went away to Europe, partied, had a few boyfriends, kissed a few frogs, a few heartbreaks, kind of just like becoming an adult, a young adult in that way. And I was working in Albany and also in between Brooklyn in marketing. And I did love that. I think that's like a part of like my energy of like how Glenville Funeral Home is different, because I call myself like I PR. I'm trying to twist the way people think about the funeral industry. But going back to me now at 23 years old, things happen. Like you go in between jobs, and in between jobs, I decided to help out the family business while I was going for interviews. My dad's like, well, just sit on in this appointment with me. I was like, all right, sure. I mean, I thought I was just doing prayer cards and wearing black and like whatever, And I'm there listening to my dad talk to this widow, this man all by himself, which broke my heart, just knowing he was by himself and there's nobody else in the meeting. And just seeing how my dad could crack a laugh and crack a smile from him and just talk about life, and it just seems so fluid. And I'm just listening. I'm making notes for him on my computer, and I don't know, just something about him and the way he talked about his wife. It was just pure love. Like people say, it's a grief when they meet with us. It's love outpouring. And when they cry, like I don't know, I wasn't scared of the tears. I was like, let it out. From that meeting, my dad was doing the business portion and finalizing his wishes. But I remember him talking about the wedding song that they had, their special song, and that she loved white orchids. And the family was going to use their own florist, but I didn't know what they were going to do. So I thought we should gift the family a white orchid. And this is right before Spotify. But I still knew how to get the song that was their wedding song. I think when I started, we were still using CDs, honestly. So I burnt down the CD, not from LimeWire. I'm not that going back there.
LimeWire.
Oh, I remember LimeWire.
But what's the other one?
I was able to download it from Apple Music, and I put it on when he came in for the actual funeral service. I played the wedding song, and he went to see his wife who was there in the casket, and the song's playing, and he sees the white orchid. And I just remember him being so grateful, and just that what I created for him as he walked up to the casket. And it was just me listening, just me saying like, what the hell am I doing here taking notes? Like my dad already did everything. At least I could do something. And I felt like my feelings toward this guy. And ever since then, I went to school, and I'm like, this has
So that
purpose.
was the moment.
That was the moment. I entered school. I told my mom and dad, I'm like, I'll give it a wing then. And I loved it. I loved it.
And no turning back.
No turning back.
I mean, I love that story because that is like, that's the Roland story, right? Like that's the go put on his favorite clothes, like have these moments, and
you don't think about it. And that's why you have the director to remind you these
there's
little
no way
things.
you can think of those things.
No.
And I also remember, all these memories coming back in this conversation, because I think, again, this is the gift of the job that you do, right? We are just like, okay, whatever casket, because we had 2 young boys. We did not think about these things. This wasn't, I don't know, I guess now at my age, I think more about like what I potentially would want or whatever, but I don't know, like we had no thought at this point. I was like 36 years old. Like it just wasn't my thought. And he was like, well, what was Jake's favorite color? And we were just like, I don't know. He didn't really have a favorite color. And this is where the red came from. I was like, but we have this great picture of him in therapy riding. It was Ethan's fire truck originally, but like they would use it as a therapy toy when like they would come. So they would put him in his brace and he would sit on the fire truck and he'd kind of like move him around. So I was like, he was always really happy on his fire truck. So he was like, let's create, like, let's get him a red casket and let's have a fire truck on the inside of it. And that's where it just like red became like, now it's the color of Jake's Hell from Heaven. It was the color of those shirts for all of those events. But that came out of Roland, like listening.
Yeah.
And that's you with the orchid and the wedding song. It's just listening, and it's brave and it's kind and it's compassionate, and it's just, I'm so happy you went back to this career, because I don't know how many funeral directors there are, but I know that there are not enough people like you and your family. A good funeral director is life-changing. So your parents, though, were they thrilled?
Oh, I
Did they
mean,
know you were always going to do it? Were they just like biting? Oh,
no.
no.
I
Okay.
mean, geez, my old Instagram account used to be worse than Lohan. I'm not even kidding.
Well, she's a mom now. She's all, she's cleaned up her act too.
Oh my gosh. And yeah, no, I was the black sheep. My sister was supposed to get into it, honestly.
Okay, so that's, how did it, are your siblings in it also, or
So I
what is
have
your?
my one sister, and unfortunately, in school, she was like going for it. And when it came to taking the tests, she just couldn't pass. And taking those tests, they're national boards. You have to
Okay.
take 2 national boards. It's hard stuff. I'm like, geez, who's writing this stuff? Are you trying to trick up the kids? Like, they know their stuff. And it's like modern warfare trying to take
Trying to
these
get through it.
exams. But my sister has so many other gifts that I feel like maybe it wasn't going to be for her too. But we always joke around throughout school. She made a lot of friends, and she actually met the man who's been working for us for 13 years. So I really can't even say, like, she's brought the best tool to the Glenville Funeral
That's
Home,
awesome.
which is my partner, my sidekick, Michael Mason. And it's just, everything works out really good on how, like, she helps the business. My dad steps in if he needs, like
Okay.
today he had to go on a call with me at Ellis, and he says he's semi-retired, but here we are. We're a family-owned business. My mom's taking the call before I get in. My dad and I are going on the removal. I'm meeting with the family. Tonight, we have Mike coming in to do the funeral service. We have my sister who comes in and helps with the stationery. We have support staff that comes in. And then now we have this wonderful funeral director named Alicia who does Friday, Saturday, Sundays. So we all who are 30-something years old with our young families, we can try to find that balance, because that's the one thing in our industry that's really hard to find, is the balance, because we are 24/7.
Well, so you raised two things there. So one of them was that, and actually they're both super connected, because you spoke earlier of the meeting you had today that was someone, I think you said, close to your age.
Same age, yeah.
And whose parents died, or mom died.
Mother died.
How do you disassociate? And maybe that's the wrong word, right? But how do you not put yourself in that position of saying, like, this could be my mom? Like, how do you keep it? How do you separate it? And then the second part of that is, how do you separate it? You have young kids. How do you do what you do and then still be you?
Oh man, I hope this isn't so long-winded.
That's a loaded question.
It is so loaded, but I don't, it's reading the room of when I can be myself on how I can connect, and when I have to be the professional to guide them. Because if I stay just like the human experience, the person, Brittany, we're not going to get anywhere.
Because you still have a job to do.
I still have to get them through the fog and through where we have to be, disconnect myself when I have to be. But then there's, like, usually at the end of the service, I'm there, they say, don't give out your cell phone to families, but I do. Like, I just, like, text me whenever you want. Like, this is, and we just find something that we can connect about. And we create that, in a way, a friendship level where they feel comfortable. They feel confident in me as a professional, but they feel comfortable with me as the friend.
Because they're leaving their person with you.
Yeah. And
I think of that. I think of Jake. I was leaving Jake in the hands of someone else. And I think of the families that we work with at Jake's. And I don't know if you've had experience with children or with parents who've lost a child. It's huge.
It's hard to put in words, because, I've never experienced that, and I can never put myself into that experience. But I just know that these are human beings going through the worst time in their life. Someone needs to be there to know that if they have questions, if they need something done, and also to know that something is being taken care of, and they can kind of like know, like, that's one less thing to have to worry from. But like you said, like, I guess this is a weird analogy. We get calls all the time. My husband passed away last night at the hospital. I don't want him in the morgue. Get him out of the, like, they don't want them in the morgue. But then, like, they already feel comfortable knowing that they're with us instead of in the morgue.
Because the morgue, it's like you watch
It's
too much TV,
cold
right? It's
TV.
like a slap.
Yes. If we let them know, like, we're personally going to go bring them into our care, and then they can meet us and then put a actual human persona and somebody who you can actually feel a little connected to. And you look them in the eye, be like, they're in our care. If you would like to see them now, you're more than welcome. Even like before the services, like you say that you had with Jake, don't feel like if you need to see them now and this is what you need, we're here to make sure we can make that happen.
I haven't talked to a lot of people about that. Like, to us, that was so important, having that time. I don't know if people, like, is that something you guys allow people to like kind of hang out? Like, it
Absolutely.
was vital for our experience, I think. But is that
Mhm.
something that other people or
Yeah.
that you offer? Like,
Yeah.
I'm offering, like, it's like on your brochure.
Oh, no, no,
Like,
no. It's definitely not something that, it's an untalked about thing publicly, but I'm glad that we have this platform. The funeral director should be there to let you know that this is your home. Back then, before funeral homes or facilities, it used to be in somebody's home
yes.
where you feel comfortable to come and go. I don't want to say names, but there was a tragedy earlier this year, and a soldier who came home, and it was it's hard for everybody. And we created this space where it was an open house in a way that anybody who we knew who was coming could come and go until the services. Especially when it comes to children, especially if it comes to infant loss. We let people stay as long as they want. And the same goes for if we have to go to the hospital and they're not ready for us to be there. We're like, give them all the time. And we don't want them to look and regret that they didn't have that. I hate using the word closure, but that way to just realize that their reality is different now and they're going to become a new version themselves, and they're going to have to go through the funeral process. And I never want to rush that. From a meeting to anything, nothing should be rushed in this process.
Well, even today when you had said, "Oh, I might be running a little late," because you're like, I always give at least 2 hours, and I respect that. I mean, because it's not a typical meeting. It's a
No, and we continue the conversations after the fact, but how do you write about a whole life in just a few hours? Honestly, when somebody first meets with us, they don't have all the questions ready. I'm always ready for the follow-up the next day,
because
which
then it's once they've thought about
yeah,
it.
absolutely, because I like to give them the information and then they can come back and we can talk more, because there's always gonna be the fog, but more things come up that they think of, or they just made decisions based on the conversation we had the day prior.
How do you, so you mentioned the soldier, or I mean, have you had experiences where it's people when it's so close to home? How do you still do your job?
The grief experience book, I speak of my story as a funeral director, and that's my grief as a funeral director. We're called the last responders, whether that's going to a nursing home or going to a home on hospice or an unattended death call. We're in the front lines of death. We're about to be faced with, whatever their story was, but also the survivors and the impact that's going to make on us. Also, people don't think that as funeral directors, we're so involved in the community that we do have to serve so many people we know, or we pre-planned with this person and we remember, oh my gosh, this is the lady that was like complimenting my shoes, and we went back and forth about like our shopping spree days, and or the man that remembers my grandpa and how they had their own friendship and he thinks I'm the strongest woman he's ever met. Like literally these people like will touch your heart, and then they pass away and you start grieving for them, even though you weren't their best friend or around them for more than a few hours.
It's grief.
It's grief. My story is about three gentlemen that I created into a Mr. Jones persona. All three of them met with me before they passed away.
3 real people.
Three real
And you created
people.
one character.
And I created one character. Most of the house scene is from this. Oh my gosh, this man was larger than life. He planned out his whole funeral and he told me a story of a lifetime, his story. And I remember him, and specifically when I did his service, because I was his celebrant, he wanted me to utilize his words.
Okay.
I remember people coming up to me like, are you related? How do you know so much about him? I'm like, he told me his story and I was the one to write it. And
What an honor.
it was the biggest honor. To this day, it was my first one too. So I certainly won't forget that. And this other gentleman, I remember he had pancreatic cancer and he lived close by where he would just go for walks. And he just ended up walking on our property and came to the front door. He's like, I want to get some literature about pre-planning. I love this man. Like, honestly, he was just brilliant man and came in and he wanted to protect his family. And I was like, well, I'll have these notes and they'll know it came from you. So, you being proactive and answering all these questions have saved them a lot of heartache or a lot of confusion. That was so memorable. And
so what was that like when he gave you that information and then you shared it
I
with the
reshared it
family?
with them. They're like, he did this. I think that was actually the hardest part, is that they just started crying because they just realized like what an amazing person he was, wanting to protect them. But also, he in a way was a little stubborn. He's like, you're going to do it my way. When I'm able to meet the people before they pass away and they choose me as their celebrant, I'm going to literally read and write a novel for them. I'm going to tell their story like no one ever has before. And they get to be a part of that process. Celebration of lives, it's not just the dark and gloomy, it's about the light and the life. So that's where I really try to channel.
As I think of the listeners and I think of people who know, this is kind of a weird way to say this, but a lot of people that I'm connected with, a disproportionate number, right? From the work we do at Jake's Help from Heaven, or just from the people that I surround myself with, right? There's like at Jake's Help from Heaven, we had 4 losses this summer. And when I think of what these families are going through, when I think of what I went through, this joy that you are talking about and that you are bringing to your job is, I don't even know the word for it, but I mean, it's like I want to do an advertisement for you. Like, everybody who is going to lose someone important, go to Brittany, because it's so horrifically dark, this loss, all loss, but particularly what I'm talking about. And when I see you taking this time and this energy and this getting to know the person and finding the joy, like even the way that we're talking about this and laughing, right? Like, because that is what people need. I think grief to so many people for so long has just been this dark, it's like this hole you dig that you never get out of. And you are starting the process of letting people out of that hole. When you are doing that for people, it's just so beautiful. I mean, I can't think of anything other. Do you think you're the exception to the rule, or do you think that a lot of funeral directors do this?
Our firm's very special. Everything from my dad, because like back in the day, like I would go out to dinner with my dad and people would come up to him and give him kisses and hugs. And I'm like, what is this, our second cousin? Who the hell is this? And like I buried his mom, I buried her husband. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is how they treat you. I've realized that's the impact of this job. And yes, my dad and my grandpa, my great grandpa's legacy, but also Michael Mason, like the way he is not a funeral director from a family. He was called to this.
Wow.
And also, my mom is like the sweetest person who just loves people. Like I feel like if you can find the light in somebody, light seekers. There's a lot of light seekers out there. I think I'm different because I'm maybe the background in marketing. Thank you, mom and dad. Thanks for paying for that undergraduate degree that you wish that you can get your money back on. But I just feel like I have that background and I'm not in the shadows like some funeral directors are, because, and also we're always working. I think there's a lot of special people out there that are in this profession. And I also think there's a lot of special people out there that should be introduced to this profession, because they'll find that purpose and their place in the world. And I find it that a lot of people push this aside because they think it's scary and dark.
I think for sure, right? People think it's like you're dealing with dead people and sadness. But
And
the way you talk about it is it's almost, yes, you're dealing with dead people, but it's the opposite. It's not sadness.
it's love. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is trying to, kind of encourage people to look into this career, and also to like kind of look inward and maybe if this is something they want to be in. But am I the exception? I think I don't look like the regular funeral director, and I certainly, based on my old profile, I don't act sometimes. But there's some really great people. I do have a difference when it comes to family versus corporation. Families take more time. They're more in the community.
So you mean like a family-based funeral home versus like a chain or something?
I think, and then compared to maybe a corporation, I think the people who are called to it at a time were like me and the funeral directors I see that value this purposeful business. But then again, it becomes a business to them because they're in a corporation that they get too busy.
Yeah.
They see the bottom line. And that's where it creates the negativity to some about our business. Yeah. And I love to educate people that it's not like that.
So you had mentioned that like your own personal grief, like you mentioned it as, sort of what you wrote in the book. Can we go into that a little bit? Because I always talk about when someone has passed and my story and how you work with stuff and your own personal, what brings it to the job. But what is your personal grief? Like what is that you bring to this? Talk to me about your grief.
Man, grief is so different right now in my life, like ambiguous grief. Now, with my own grief, I hate saying this, but sometimes I feel like the lucky one and I have guilt because my big grief right now is my mother in law that passed away, which has changed our lives tremendously.
Recently?
2 years ago,
Okay.
thinking about my husband, especially with him being a man too, like you expect, the men to be strong, and he's really tried putting on a persona. And then you see, like, you know what? Men shatter too and their emotions. And I don't know, looking through that window as the in law, and when I'm at the end of the table talking to the families and I'm seeing the in laws write all the notes down, doing all this stuff, like trying to keep the family together, I have that, like, I feel you, I see you kind of thing.
Because they feel like they shouldn't grieve as much because
Yeah,
it's the in-law, it's the
yeah.
separation.
I always connect with them, so I can never like put myself into it, but I can relate.
Was it unexpected?
No, and yes. She was on dialysis, and it was just such a poor living condition. She couldn't go anywhere. She was like miserable, and she was depleting. And she got a kidney transplant. She got it. We just got engaged, and I like to see the positive in some things. If she didn't have that, she wouldn't be able to go to our wedding. She wouldn't have been around for our daughter's for first year of life. She had a reaction to the kidney medication that created cancer in her body, a rare form of cancer, and that's what ultimately took her life. It was just great 2.5 years, 3 years of her after having the kidney transplant.
So the transplant extended.
Yeah. And then, you know what? I've had loss of my grandmother, which I bring up a lot. My grandma is my spirit animal. She literally directs me. I could just feel her. She's always with me. And we were thick as thieves. And the thing is that is amazing about my grandmother, but grandmothers in general. She has 12 grandchildren. She made us all feel special.
Like you're all number one.
And I'm like, how the hell did this woman have the time and the energy to do this? But I think I speak for all 12 of us that she was a spectacular woman that knew how to channel her love and channel that energy. And I'm still feeling it. And when she passed away right before COVID, which we all kind of do think it was COVID, it was that February 2020 era. It was weird how it happened. Everybody was home because they're all home for my nephew's baptism. He was the first grandson, so it was a big deal. So everybody was in town. It was like something out of a movie. It was code red, right? And we got the call, and everybody left from church, as they say. If anybody who's a person of faith, God takes and gives angels. He was giving the angels, looking over my nephew and taking an angel back to heaven. That's how we were thinking about it. And funny thing that I mentioned that is people who are very spiritual, they do say that when people pass away, that's usually what happens around a baby coming or a baptism or something that happens where a child is being born or baptized or maybe a special occasion, and then a death occurs. Like, it's time.
So I have a version of that. So when Jake was in the hospital for 117 days. And when he came home, my grandmother was still alive, but not doing great, and we had this, so Ethan and Jake knew their great grandmother a little bit, but when she passed, it was kind of with this idea that, okay, she was passing so Jake could live. Like, not the same, but as soon as you said that, it made me think of that, and not that I'm overly Catholic, but there is that idea out there that like, one goes so another could come. And I don't know. We always thought that he had he got about 3 years after that. It is.
Life is weird. But what they do say is, if there was enough room for all of us, then there would be no death. The world isn't meant for all of us at this time. And I don't know whoever made up the rules, but they really up.
You are not wrong. So your grandmother passed around COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Was she healthy prior to that?
Oh my gosh, she was literally just like the coolest person. And my root from one of the very popular cemeteries was going past her apartment, and I would just go back afterwards, be like, you guys go off with the hearse, I'll take the lead vehicle or the flower vehicle, drop off to my Mimi's, and we gossip. She tells me everything. Like, honestly, she has 7 children. She can't keep a secret. So I knew all the secrets. I'm like, why the hell am I telling you my secrets? Everyone's going to know, but I just need to tell you. And it's just like, your life is altered, and that person that meant so much to you is no longer there, and you'll always grieve them. You will always, and it's, not that a grandmother's not that important, but like, I'm so lucky to have had her into my adulthood, and I will grieve her until the day I die. That ripple of you, that relationship is no longer there, and you just have to keep that
But
hope.
who you were with that person is still there, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing that in my book I say you have to continue for them.
Yes.
I know we could talk all day. We have to so my tool is in a way a bucket list. And I have prompts, and it's to make you think, like, what are the things that you enjoy doing? Why are you not doing these things anymore? What is something that you enjoy to do with this person? What is something that your loved one would want you to continue? What is something you can do in honor of them? So my prompts are things that you can look into your own life, because, you're here to keep on living. They don't want you to just give up. And if you could take some things of them with you along your own journey, you're continuing them.
Yep. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's all. I mean, I know that it's all I wanted with Jake, and it took me a while to figure out how to find my sort of voice to talk about it as much as I do now. But that's all you want. Like, you want to keep them on this ride with you, right? Like, it's like, so they're physically not here, but we were just away for the weekend, and it never ceases to amaze me, the signs that are there when you're looking for them, right? Jake used to come to Plum Island with us. We were there this past weekend. We were nervous the first summer we went without him, because I was like, it could be too horrific. Like, it could be too many memories because it's such a small place, or it could be great. It was great. Like, we felt him everywhere. We got there on Thursday. We went for a walk. A cardinal darted right in front of us. Brian and I were like, here we are. Jake's here. All is good. We go to like the corner store to like get some stuff. We open up the freezer filled with, I don't know, probably 75 pints of Jake's ice cream. Like, we're like, he's here, he's everywhere. And I think that the moral of that story is exactly what you're saying. What did you do with the person? Keep doing it. Keep living that life, and keep that person here.
That void's always going to be there, but if you fill it with the goodness, and like you say, the place of yes, I'm going to do this. I also think of like, what's going to happen if you don't do those things, and then we pass away, and then they yell at us when we're all together again. Like, what the hell were you doing? I was watching from you. I was like trying to send you every sign, and you weren't going to do it. Like, why did you not? Because they just want your happiness, and it's not the easiest yes, and like to move forward.
No, but it's an important one.
But it's, if you could try to strive every day to try to get up and do something that reminds you of the person you love, but also reminds you of you too.
I love that. And I think that's it's almost the most important takeaway of everything we've talked about, because I know that some of these people listening are in the throes of it, right? And it's so hard in grief. It is so hard to keep yourself out of it, right? I love that you called it a toolkit. So the book is called The Grief Experience, and it's.
Yeah. So that's my chapter, but there's 20 other authors, and they all have a story to tell. And with that, they have a tool. All loss is different, as we all know. All grief is it's not universal. It's unique to everybody. So, the book is supposed to be like, all right, so here's chapter 1, and then to 20. If my grief story and tool works for you, good. Somebody who's reading this, it helped them. But not every story is going to be correlating to you. So,
like the ones that.
So think about like throwing a ball out to the crowd. Someone's going to catch it. And if one person catches it for every chapter, look at all the people we are starting to heal and impact and pass on that knowledge to.
I'm so happy that you circled back to it, because it is, you talked about it being family, and you talked about people finding their calling. So I think it's very clear that for you, it's both. It was a calling, and you are doing it with your family. And I think you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And thank you for sharing your stories here and for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We always end the show with the Ask Heather Anything segment. So, do you have any Ask Heather Anything? They can be any kind you want. They do not have to be serious. I think people tend to think that because we talk about heavy things, this is supposed to be light. So
if you were to go back to the funeral experience for Jake, would you change anything?
That's an excellent question. I don't think so. Kind of like how I said earlier, I think that Roland guided us in such a way that it was exactly what we needed. And he gave us, like how you just spoke, like he was our trusted person. We didn't have to do anything, right? Like, there was one part where there were certain family members, like, and this is when we were at the graveside, and he was taking Jake out of the hearse and bringing him over to be buried. We had some family members who were like, okay, this is who's going to do it. And it's just the men. And I was like, no, I am carrying my son. Brian kind of handled it, but Roland also, there was nothing that, I'm trying to think of what the word, like nothing flustered him, right? Like he could just handle anything. And it's kind of like when you talk about being a bouncer. So I don't look back, and there's nothing that I would do different other than the obvious, that I wish I never had to do it at all. I wish I didn't have this experience to share, right? Like I wish I didn't know the importance of this job, but since I do, I don't think I would change anything.
And that means a lot.
Thank you for listening to A Place of Yes. Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend, anybody who might benefit from listening to this. It would make a world of difference if we could just reach more people and share the work that we do and the stories we want to tell. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave us a thumbs up or leave us a comment. We would appreciate all that you can do. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend or two.